And there's one thing I like to bring up about the strong links between the Cajuns and Acadians. I talked about my great grandparents' generation. Well, my grandparents' generation, my maternal grandparents, and I don't know if Hector, I don't know if you're listening to this, but buddy, I hope you're listening because you were with my grandparents. Uh, and I know Hector very well. And they used to, I should say, have bus trips to the United States. I remember there's a video of my maternal grandfather at the Hershey factory in Pennsylvania. I remember the VHS. I don't know if I still have that or not. And they actually went to Church Point, Louisiana. And I don't know how the word spread. I do know Hector, the guy I know, knows people in Louisiana. He's actually responsible for, or partially responsible for the Daniel Leblanc Monument in Annapolis Royal. And the Cajuns, they were waiting for that Acadian bus because they were Acadians. They was all an Acadian bus. And they had like this big meal. I can't remember if it was dinner or supper, depending on which region of the world you live in. If it was at noon or at 5 p.m. To translate it, right? So, to do something like that, to wake people and all that, the links were strong, and the links are still strong here till this day. It's one of those things. It's part of our history. When I was younger, it's like that's all you talk about, deportation, which it was really it wasn't something to say because it was a horrible thing and pretty insensitive. But on the other hand, yeah, sure, you should learn more stuff about yourself and modern, but if you don't know your history, I find it's kind of strange not to really know what your culture is all about.
Yep.
And stuff like that. And so that brings me to you. We talked about Church Point, Louisiana, in your area, which we do not need to know where you live, and it doesn't matter because you're in the United States. Obviously, there's different cultures in the United States, but at the end of the day, let's assume that you're not in Louisiana. We can say that, right? You don't live in Louisiana. We can say that.
I do not.
How do you live your culture in your area?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because, so unfortunately, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina kind of made its way to the Louisiana region, most predominantly New Orleans. So we actually, the people of New Orleans, which is more Creole central, but we got all kinds of Louisiana migrating over to where we are. And so with them, they brought their cuisine, their culture, their accent. And this was in 2005. So it was a long time ago. And not to deviate too far off topic, but I look back on my life and I see from very young, obviously long before 2005 and Hurricane Katrina, many little drops of, hey, this is who you are, along the way. But that Hurricane Katrina displacement was another. And so they just brought, there were all kinds of Cajun meat markets that popped up, Cajun restaurants. Not a lot, but they did pop up, and so that was exciting. And then actually one of my summer jobs, I worked with some people who were of the displaced population, and so I was able to learn from them about Louisiana, where they came from, what the culture was. To be honest, I found their accent very funny, I guess, which is commonplace when there are people that come to where you are and their accent is different, and I'm 100% positive you experienced it going to other places that people will say, "Oh, your accent," you know. So we experienced it too, and I experienced when they came up here. I said, "Well, you know," I said, "from coming from New Orleans, you guys sound there was a little bit of a slight northeastern American twang to it," and that had kind of thrown me off because it didn't make sense where their accent came from. I said, "Well, you're from very south, but there's a little bit of a northeastern element to it." So, you know, but the exposure to the culture of the food most particularly was definitely interesting. But actually prior to that, I had learned that I actually was a fan of spicy food quite a bit. And in high school, in learning that I was a fan, somebody who her family was from New Orleans was like, "You ever heard of Cajun people, Cajun food?" And I was like, "No," because I hadn't. And she said, "Well, you know, they love spicy food. You should try out Cajun food." And I was like, "Okay." So it's just funny when you look back on your life and you see those little moments and you're like, interesting. But yes, no, the Katrina migration was the largest exposure for, you know, not only me but our region to just Louisiana as a whole, you know. And we still, you know, there are still people that are here from the Katrina era.
Yeah.
Tons and tons.
Yeah, and there's one thing about Cajuns, but the Cajun culture, I should say. I don't know if you've ever watched the film of Finding Cajun. I don't know if you haven't. Have you? Yeah. Cajun is like a brand now. And I haven't watched the film and all that, but that's interesting because that's you're integrating Cajun culture into American culture in a positive way. I would summarize it like that. I don't know if you feel the same way,
right?
But I mean, like Cajun hot sauce and all that. As in Canada, I mean, Acadians, I would say we're known pretty well. I know. I met some people in Vancouver when I was in Cuba 10 years ago, and they knew all about l'Acadie. Well, they didn't know much about it, but they knew Acadie was there. Acadien, you know, and all that. And I mean, Canada knows there's, I mean, as like New Brunswick, everyone knows that's a bilingual province, you know. They may not know about Acadians too much there, but they do know there's francophones, you know. So it's interesting because it's like American pop culture. American pop culture adopted the Cajuns while Acadians are known in the Canadian way. I don't know, just my theory. Feel free to disagree. It's just my opinion.
No, I completely agree. Actually, I feel that the main contribution was Chef Prudhomme. Chef Prudhomme was the main window to that introduction to mainstreaming Cajun cuisine and culture and people to the American population, because unfortunately prior to him it was not, you know, the culture was not very well known, nor was the cuisine, nor the language, and so he really brought it to the forefront.
Yeah, it's,
you know, and then people were like, "Oh, these people eat really good food. Let's incorporate that into everything."
Yeah, what's really striking, you know, one observation I will say is here in, let's just say, the Acadians in Nova Scotia. You've listened to some Acadian music from here in Nova Scotia, I'm sure. You haven't listened to Grand Dérangement, have you? Okay, no. I should show you some stuff. Anyways, yeah, that's like heavily Celtic influenced, that band, and all that. And there's like such a Celtic influence in Nova Scotia. Like seriously, like you look at our flag, there's like the two Scottish flags in one. The old Scottish flag is in there, and like the modern Scottish flag, other than the colors are inversed. But anyways, enough of that. And it's so strange because Acadians were so similar to Nova Scotians as we are Nova Scotian, but I mean, the violins and the type of music and all that, when it comes to traditional culture, because Nova Scotia, as far as I'm concerned, is a culture by itself. I mean, we've had so many great musicians come out of Nova Scotia, like we're like amazing. I'm not talking about mainstream musicians we see nowadays, which some of them are good, but let's be honest, some got a break. And you know, as you look in Louisiana, it's so different from the rest of the United States.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm explaining this properly or not, but it's like one thing I will say is that here in Canada, at least in Eastern Canada, I would say Acadians are so compatible with the surrounding cultures as in Cajuns. They're not. It's so distinct.
Right.
You know? Yeah. That's like, and I don't consider that a bad thing. You know, I mean, I enjoy Nova Scotia culture. I do, because I am a Nova Scotian. I'm bilingual. I mingle in. It's just great. It's a nice spot. It's amazing. I love it here.
It is.
You've never been here though.
I want to go so badly.
You do?
Yeah.
One of these days. One of these days. Coming back to Acadians and all that, one thing I will add is this is something I want to do a podcast on eventually. The Acadians in Maine that were in Maine, it didn't have it easy. There was intimidation tactics from some groups. I will leave it at that. You know, it wasn't easy. I've seen some newspaper articles listing, you know, cheap labor and all that. You know, and I've been lucky, you know. I mean, sure, when I was in school, I'm not scared to say it. I might piss some people off. Well, sometimes the truth hurts. We were told that we spoke wrong. And speaking about that, I mean, one thing, as someone living in the United States, and you don't have to disclose your location, we've spoken about linguistic insecurity before, have we?
Oh, definitely.
So here, like, there's a culture in the French language that, like, even in the medieval times, like a king would tell a group, you're not speaking well. Okay. If a leader here in Acadia and l'Acadie back in the day would say, you people do not speak well, right? Because of our accent, because we say baye, not dune, quasiment instead of presque, you know, and all that. And what do you have to say about that? Because I will not disclose your geographical location, but I do believe you have something to say about that. What do you guys say about that?
Oh, gosh, I can definitely relate. The region of the states where I'm from is typically oftentimes told that we also do not speak the proper English. And I heard that so often growing up, actually, to the point so much where, you know, I feel my, you know, grandparents and parents to a degree were very strict as to not just the words that we used, but how we pronounced them. So that was deeply ingrained in us as well. But I feel like with, you know, being Anglophone, the correlation, of course, to, you know, Great Britain, for instance, they'll use different like nouns, if you will, for certain things that we don't necessarily use in the States. Knickerbockers or whatever they use that we're just that are very foreign to us.
Like,
and I feel like
you in the States say ping pong, right? They say it different.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yes, we're a ping pong nation, and they are of with waff.
Yeah.
Nation.
Ping pong originated on the dining tables of Britain. So just so
Yeah.
you all know, a shout out to Boris.
Yeah. Shout out to Boris Johnson and his whiff waff league.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can absolutely see how that could, be applied. But I feel as though the difference in accent, the difference in word usage does not by any means mean that one is superior or inferior to another. It's just a different corner, if you will, of the francophone world. In this corner, we might have this accent. That doesn't mean that it's inferior to any other part of the francophone world. We just have this accent. We use certain words that maybe France doesn't use, but that doesn't mean that our French is inferior. And I feel like that's similar with the Anglophone region. Actually, if we're really, really, really being honest, of course, in the U.S., I would say that the strongest second language would be Spanish, and that same thing happens with Spanish speakers. They
Of course, because
over.
not to interrupt, but there's so many different dialects of Spanish. Like you get a Cuban, Dominican, like the Dominicans like, like,
So many.
and the Cubans they speak so.
Yes.
You understand them way better, I find, than the Dominicans, and it's not a knock to the Dominicans because they're like hyper anyways. They're so hyper, and it's just their way. And the Cubans are more laid back. Like Dominicans are laid back in their own way. But go on, please.
Oh yeah, there's a differential in pronunciation. There's a differential in like nouns that they use. For instance, like straw. The word for straw, like when you sip out of a drink. I was taught when I learned Spanish, it was popote. And that's a very Mexican derived word. Doesn't mean that it's inferior. That's just what I was taught. And then in other areas of Latin America, when I say, hey, do you have a popote? They're like, popote? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Basically. And so it's slightly a relief to see that we aren't the only ones who experience that linguistic insecurity, that's also felt in, the Francophone world, the Latin American world, I'm sure in, other linguistic regions as well. But I feel like it takes time and growth in self and growth in culture to be like, to get to that point, to finally arrive at that point that, for Spanish speakers, it's not wrong to say popote or whatever else, whichever country says. However, I know popote is Mexican, but there's nothing wrong with that versus how they may say in the Dominican Republic, or, in Chiac, they may say whatever for straw, and then, in Acadie, they may say a different word, and in Quebec, they may say whatever, in Haiti, they say whatever, in France, they say whatever. There isn't to say that, the French way or the Quebecois way is the right way, and anything else that isn't of these two is inferior. No, it's just different.
Yeah, like how it works here is pretty sad in a way, because here in Nova Scotia, the impression a lot of people have, which is that here, Southern New Brunswick, that's good French. Southern New Brunswick, they think Northern New Brunswick's good French. Northern New Brunswick, they think Quebec is good French. Quebec, they think France is good French. That's the dynamic here. Yeah. And it's something else. It's just like that. I mean, the thing about all this is that the one thing I will mention quickly is that the thing about Francophone speakers is that in Canada anyways, is that we basically have Canadian English, right? Which is basically North American English. There's not much of a difference, let's face it.
Right.
And if there's any linguistic insecurity or a défi, as we say in French, you turn to English. You have no idea how many people in Quebec have spoken me in English. You have no idea. A lot of them, the second I start talking to them, it's in English.
That's actually that's dumbfounding to hear.
It's nothing new. I mean, yeah, like I had a conversation with Gabriel Malafon from Radio. It was my fourth podcast, and Southeast New Brunswick and Southwest Nova Scotia, I didn't realize it, but we have so many of the same issues. It's not even funny. Yeah.
Huh.
I can believe it. And they're from a bilingual spot, but at the same time, I think things are finally getting better. I think the kids in school, it's being talked about more and all that. And,
right.
Thankfully, I hope they won't feel there's a liability that they're taking their school in French like we kind of had. But there were some circumstances about that. I won't get too much into that. But there were some circumstances. But yeah, that's one thing. I mean, when people say, and this is talking about any accent, French or English, and people, this is Acadian related because we have to be happy how we speak and all that. You have to keep in mind there are most notably parts in the United States. I don't know if it's as much as in Canada, but there's some part in the United States. I mean, you listen to someone in English, you might need a translator. There's oh my gosh. There's like borderline dialects. Oh
my gosh.
Like it's like when I was in the Dominican Republic for a zip line. I've told you this story before. There was this guy from Tennessee running the zip line. I asked the guy, "Hey, you're from the United States. I can tell by your accent."
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, my wife's from Georgia. You don't understand a word she says." Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say more about that, to be honest. I think it's good that we bring that up. It's not just in the French language, Yeah. And this is something in my podcast that I've touched a lot on. Yeah,
massively.
Because the discussion needs to come. And in Quebec, there's some issues there. We don't realize it, but there's some linguistic issues there. In fact, I know for a fact that our prime minister, who was brought up bilingual, is more comfortable in the English debate than the French debate. I'm serious. I can tell you right now. His papa was good in the French debate, I'll tell you. But yeah.
Oh, flawless. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Flawless.
His papa was like pure Canadian French. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, there's even a Radio Canada clip on that. They actually talked about that. And actually the CBC, they were saying the Prime Minister of Canada actually performs better in English debates than the French debates.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyways.
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's something. It's if you're brought up bilingual, which you were, and you're, oh gosh, I wish my French was as good as your English.
That's not saying much because I live my life a lot in French. So even though when I go to the Tim Hortons drive-thru, 90% of the time is in English, but I want a small black coffee. That's not hard to say.
Yes.
So,
yes. Oh my God.
If you ever come to Canada, you will know what a double is. Two sugars and 2 milks.
All kinds of.
Yeah.
Oh, the way to have a coffee.
Yeah.
But I mean, going back to the accent, like what I think is really funny, I went for university, I went to a different part of the state that I'm from than where I grew up, and in that same region there were people who went to college from not too far off from that same region. And this gentleman and I, it was my roommate's boyfriend at the time. They've since married and they have children. But
Right
at
on.
the time, we were
Yeah.
boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Same state. We were from the same state. I didn't understand a word he said. A word. And we grew up maybe an hour and a half from one another. But I was completely at a loss as to what was coming out of his mouth. I'd have to look to it. We spoke the same language. And I'd have to look to somebody else and be like, wait, what
Actually,
what did he just say?
Actually, I just thought of something. A lot. We're talking about that in Canada. We do see stuff like that. Oh
Really?
my goodness! I forgot. For everyone listening in Canada that's been screaming at their friggin' radio right now or on YouTube, I've finally been enlightened. If you've ever been to Cape Breton or Newfoundland, I tell you,
No.
there's some of those people in Cape Breton which, man, I love hearing them speak. What saves me, I'll be honest with you, is that you can make out maybe 2 or 4 of their words, right? And you can really make out what they're saying, right? Like, but, you know, the nicest people you'll meet and all of that. But yeah, it's all about linguistic insecurity. And
Yes.
don't be fooled. This is an Acadian podcast, but we're just trying to make points to all of you. You know, it's...
Yeah.
You have to be proud of where you are and your accent and all that. And it doesn't make you less French than the other person. I would argue that, you know, something, there's, if someone makes fun of you for speaking Chiac or Acadian, just keep in mind that person making fun of you is making fun of you because you're speaking 2 languages at one time.
Yes, exactly.
You know, and that's just stupid.
It's jealousy at the end of the day.
Rick knows. So, in your journey about learning about your Acadian and Cajun identity, what would say is the biggest surprise you had? Other than the big surprise, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than the big surprise, honestly, it would be hearing how similar, and again, my French needs a lot of help to be generous about it, but to hear the very strong similarities in the manner of speaking, the accent between Cajuns and Acadians, that part was what really was a big shocker for me, because Le Grand Dérangement happened in 1755 is when it started. And to have had minute, if any, changes in that span of time is it's dumbfounding, and not in a bad way. It's just, you know, it leaves you like, wow, how can so much time have passed and there be still that strong similarity in accents? So that I thought was actually pretty wild, you know, because, you know, you can have people who their parents were maybe born and raised in, I don't know, say Michigan. You know, Michigan has different accents in different parts of the state, but let's just say the capital, and then they move their kids to California. You know, their kids may grow up with a Californian accent, even though they grew up here and their Michigan parents speak very much so with a Michigan accent. So, you know, and that's just a generation of separation. So to have had, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many generations from 1755 to now, that's good grief. Just a lot. And for the accent to not really have changed that much, that really floored me.
Yeah.
I was really taken aback,
Yeah.
like how that could have happened.
Yeah, I get you. So this is something I'm just curious to know. Out of all this, we talked about Acadians and all that. But when you see an Acadian, you see a Canadian. Is there anything in your journey that you have learned about Canadians?
You know, here's the slight differential that I feel that I have observed between Acadians and Cajuns, and it actually speaks to Canada. And there is an ever so slight, even though Cajuns were very closed off to the Anglophone world for the most part, for like ever, for centuries. There's a slight, ever so slight bit of like Anglicism in the accent. And in l'Acadie, when we have our francophones speaking French, there's a ever so slight bit of a Canadian twist to the accent. Just a little. I can't really pinpoint it precisely, but it's something that I've picked up on when I hear it spoken. It's the ever so slight little twist that I think is precious, and I love it. I love it. So one of my maternal cousins, of course, who is not, Acadian at all, he lives in, I guess, an hour and a half outside of Toronto in Ontario, and I kind of picked up from his wife, who is Canadian Anglophone, the sorry, the tendency towards sorry. And it's funny because, like, I've been accused of being an over apologizer in my time, and so now I just chalk it up to, well, I've got some pretty strong Canadian roots, so there you have it.
Okay.
So
Interesting
my
observation. Yeah, interesting, of course. And as you kept discovering about your Cajun heritage, or perhaps you've been meeting people that have been helping you on the way, or your journey, if you will. Is there a touching moment in your journey?
Oh, man.
One moment in particular you say you're like, wow. Is there...
Massively.
Is anything that stands out?
Massively. Absolutely. When I reached out to you and you were, in spite of the circumstances that are very sensitive surrounding my existence, the warmth and welcoming that you showed me of, no, you're our people. Like, if you're related to me, you're Acadian, and the openness and willingness to accept me in spite of all that, and opening and excitement to teach me about our people, our history, our culture, our language, even the little words that are different between, standard French and Acadian French, which is just between you and me and everybody. I do want to learn those words and learn the accent over my standardized French. It meant so much to me that there was that acceptance with arms open wide, very warm and welcoming, and I'll never forget that for as long as I live. That will have probably the largest impact on really this experience, as well as my life, that, over anything in my many years. So it did. It meant the world to me. It really did.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. But hey, it was crazy time. It was when the pandemic hit and all that.
Oh.
And
talk about timing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's... And I would say that Well, I mean, everyone knows I did the DNA test too. And when you see the strong links between the Cajuns and the Acadians, and how the percentage is high for some people, we've been separated since 1755.
That's what boggles my mind. How is this so high when it's been, and that made me, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, because mine was not the only secret. My paternity was not the only secret I uncovered. So then when I saw that strong correlation, I was like, well, is there another secret? Are we more directly connected to the Canadian link closer than 1755?
Yes,
that got my wheels turning.
Yeah, and actually there's another guy, I think I've told you about that. There's a colored guy, I will say his name, you wouldn't mind, I think he has a podcast in Louisiana, Talib.
Oh, yeah.
He reached out to me and 23andMe. The creepy thing is that we were actually Twitter messaging each other 2 days before. And he said we're related, third cousin, it said. But I had to explain to him, true Acadian links, there's more than just one link, which is probably what is confusing the 23andMe system.
Yes, I agree.
And all that.
I agree completely.
So, and I explained that to him, and I told him, listen, it's before 1755. And one last thing before we play our little game after.
Ooh, game time. I love it.
Yeah. One of these days, I know more people will know you're a Cajun.
Yes.
What do you plan to do to help your culture?
Oh, man. I feel it really boils down to exposure at a young age, because I feel as though those of my generation and of my biological father and his brothers and sisters generation, which is where that disconnect happened between their father, who was my grandfather, who was full Cajun, and them, and then it's the exposure in youth. And I feel as though that is where tying it to being able to pass it down is exposing the children to the language, the music, most importantly, the food, which is out of this world amazing, and tying it all together for a full, all-around cultural experience for them to really be able to make it sentimental to where they're like, they want to seek it out, and they want to strengthen those exposures to be able to strengthen it within themselves. And then in turn, when the time comes to pass the torch on to their children, that's what I feel will be key. Having these, little cultural revivals where we have the little, there's Zydeco, there's Cajun music, making sure it is a very strong part of the educational curriculum for children. That is what will really turn this wave around from the loss of culture to the revival. That is that absolutely key component to making sure it is not lost.
Okay, gotcha. For sure. Well said. It's one of those things. This is like a first for me for doing a podcast like this. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to review this video / audio, and I'm sure people are saying this is good. It's one of those things that the dysphoria is there, Acadian dysphoria, and it'll be interesting to see how much more of a connection we have it moving forward. Because it's one of those things, they try to separate us, but within time, it worked less and less. A lot to do with technology. Airplanes came, Now the internet, I did a podcast with Barry Osala. We talked through the internet, you know, stuff like that. So one thing I do after, I should say, during my podcast, I usually play l'association des mots, which is basically word association.
Ooh.
So I got some very random words for you. And the first thing that comes out of your head, or should I say the first thing that you think of, repeat it. You want to do this?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to start with an American gem. Number 1, Aaron-Rodgers.
Aaron-Rodgers. Ooh, classic. Oh, that's difficult. Dang it. I would just say classic.
Yeah. I think he's the new Tom Brady. People like to pick on him.
Yes, he is the new Tom Brady. Oh my gosh, you said
he's like how can I put this? He's so under the microscope. It's like Brady's proven that he's the GOAT. And no one can say anything. Now they have to pick on the guy who's probably the best quarterback in the NFL right now, in my opinion.
I could not agree more.
But there's a quarterback in Buffalo there. I don't know. He might be the best soon.
Giving him a run for money.
Number 2. Okay, we're going to go to Canada now. Wayne Gretzky.
Oh, the greatest ever, or the greatest of all time.
I would say the greatest playmaker of all time. I would say, my opinion. I'll tell you. What's that?
The Go Pot?
The Go Pot? You mean the greatest of... Oh, I got you now. The Go Pot? Yeah. There's actually a young kid playing in Edmonton right now where Gretzky started his career. You should see him. He can skate with the puck 45 kilometers an hour laterally. It's just insane. Connor McDavid, I seen him go through 4 players and score. Just insane, the kid. Number 3, Quebec.
Quebec. Montreal.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe the best city in North America. I'll tell you something. And I've heard so many great things about that city. And no offense to Toronto, but if you want to go to Canadian City, I would suggest Montreal. And Quebec City's a nice spot to see, too. I've been to Quebec City. I've only been to Montreal briefly. But, but I heard so many great things. And speaking of a city that's a must-see, Nombre 4, Paris.
Oh, Nombre 4, Paris. Tous les arrondissements.
Les quoi?
Des arrondissements.
Arrondissements.
The how they section off Paris. I think they're called arrondissements.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
That's what I think of. Well, actually, you know what? No. Let me go to my secondary. This is kind of the catacombes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a must-see city for sure. Like the Eiffel Tower and all that. But to be perfectly honest with you, if I wanted to see France, I'd have to go to spots like La Rochelle and all that. I would be absolutely overwhelmed if I'd see La Rochelle, where the first Thibaults came from. I would absolutely. And there's the spot where the Leblancs came from, which, you know, that would be nice because my mother was a Leblanc and I have some Como in me. You know how it works in Acadie.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so United States, Canada, Quebec, and France. So now we're going to go more in your alley. Number 5, crawfish. Delicious. Okay, here's something. Number 6. How about the speed limit?
Oh, gosh. Ugh. Well, the first word association I have is trouble because I have, as we say in English, a lead foot.
Yeah, lead foot. That's le pied pesant, as we would say here.
Oh, j'ai tout mon ça. J'ai tout mon ça.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like
Oh.
Tom Brady with his footballs. He doesn't check if they're deflated or not. Number 7.
Yes.
Number 7, Miss Piggy.
Comment?
Miss Piggy.
Oh, Oh, yeah, Miss Piggy. Oh, Kermit.
Yeah. Number 8, California.
California. Oh, beautiful.
Number 9, British Columbia.
British Columbia.
That's not good.
When I think of British Columbia, I think of a plant that there's a difference between how Canada treats said plant and the United States treats said plant. But I associate it predominantly with BC.
Actually, they're the first province to ever have some form of legalization there. Yeah. I can't remember. There was like this guy. His first name was Mark. He was like this marijuana activist. He would always get arrested and all that. Like, man, it was like I watched the news sometimes just to see the shit he would get into. Like, he's not hurting anyone else, so I can laugh about this.
Right. Not hurting anybody else.
Yeah, and he was like this big marijuana activist and all that. I think he might have been the leader of the marijuana party, actually.
Oh, wow.
I don't think they need that anymore.
Yeah.
Here. Number 10, number 10, l'Acadie.
Ooh, l'Acadie. Oh, motherland.
Nice. Et puis, j'ai le mot Acadian du jour. I've got the Acadian word of the day.
Yes.
It's not exactly an old Acadian word, but I've got a word for you. Kizima. What would that mean?
Oh my. Je sais pas.
Français, on dirait presque, and in English we would say almost. And
oh yeah.
in English,
Presque.
I don't know if you've ever heard the word quasi.
Quasi.
Kizima, quasi. There's a link there.
Is that an Anglicism?
No, that is not an Anglicism. That is in the T. Robert Dictionnaire. Kizima. You Google Kizima, it's still listed as a word. It's not etymology, as we would say in French. Etymology would mean an old word that isn't used anymore, basically. Yeah, so that's your lesson of the day, Mrs. Amanda.
I love it. Yes. I need to get my French to a better place. So there's that, first and foremost. Secondly, once I get my French to a better place to where I can communiquer un peu plus, then I'll get to switching over my words, because I want to use the words of the nous.
That's awesome. Everyone, thank you for listening. Et puis, à la prochaine.